Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is Laser Les Tindell, and he's does a kind of work that I'm not totally familiar with. He's been on my show before, and he's going to be telling us about this kind of research he does, that he's able to look into negatives in a certain particular kind of way. I think he can describe the procedure better than I can, and be able to see images that were on the stone that you cannot see any other way. And he's found some very interesting thing about the Anunnaki from stones right here in America. Les, how are you doing tonight?
Fine, thank you, Royce, and thank you for having me back again. I really appreciate it. You were the first one to have ever offered me a radio interview for this research, which is unique in all the world. At this point, I have been doing it since 1994, publishing. I don't have any books, but all of my research is published on the website impactoptics.com, impactoptics.com. And this website has been online about 16 years now. I go to the Wayback Machine and see the earlier versions and kind of laugh, but I wasn't off track. What I've discovered are stones that were inscribed with photographic images, and they're contiguous or continuous images. So they would be essentially a whole recording or a hologram. These stone-scribed holograms essentially are presented in a negative form or as media. Stone being very robust, and the media needs translation through optics. So I developed a process which involves spectrum-specific illumination, and all of these words I'm throwing out, petroglyph or stone photo engraving, and spectrum-specific illumination are all kind of keywords that I've coined. And if you Google those words, you'll find that I'm basically the only research entity and information resource for these artifacts and the technology using spectrum-specific illumination. So what we're going to do tonight, Royce has offered me a little bit of time. We're going to open a portal, and this portal is going to be through the projections of a stone that we're going to light up, and I've already done that and recorded the images that project from the stone, placed them in a fashion such they could be understood, because deciphering the projections is a simple matter of going to our database of knowledge. The internet seems to provide a viable tool for that, and we can actually see some of the things that you've only heard and read about in life. I also have Skype Laser Les 1, one word, LASERLES1. If anybody wants to give me a call, I can flash the artifact up in front of them, although looking at these artifacts would be like looking at a DVD of a fantastic movie. There's really nothing there until you translate it through a DVD player or a Blu-ray or whatever you have. So
right.
That's what we're going to do.
Need a certain thing in order to read it to make it visible. Now, also, you did mention in an email that you had a discovery of some kind of import, I think, for 2012. Are you going to share a little bit of that with us tonight as well?
Right. That's all part of the codex and the story that projects. And when you see these projections, and if you were to take a list of the things you see, in essence, you list them in order. I see this creature, and it's in a ditch, and I see this individual, and he's looking over this temple. Once you've described those things on a list, you can actually go to scripture, mythology, and archaeological records, and you would actually find that. Or if you didn't know that, you could actually write scripture or archaeological record from this. So this is essentially a portal, no different than a cell phone. It's a means of communication, and it requires translation, just like a phone takes an audio voice and turns it into an electronic signal, and then returns it to an audio signal that we can hear. There's a lot of translation there, or transduction of the image, and that's what we're going to do in impactoptics.com. And if everybody would, if there's anybody listening, it's http://impactoptics, impactoptics.com. And I think Royce had it on his index page. So,
right.
Anybody wants to go there, I'm going to start with the website map. And my recommendations, I don't know what browser is best. I find that Internet Explorer 8 works good for the number of the motion or GIFs that I have, images. Google Chrome, Firefox is actually too fast, and sometimes they get hung up. So there's a choice there, and one is slower, one is faster. I'm going to use Internet Explorer. Both of them have Internet Explorer in the lower right, there's a magnifying glass. So any of the images that we see, if you think you want to look at more detail and enlargement, you can either go there, or most times I've provided an enlargement where if you right-click and open in another tab, you can actually see the enlargement of that image. So we're going to start with there's a Zoroaster button that indicates a website map, and if we all click that website map and keep that as our first tab, we can then open up this portal through this website. There are very few websites that are actually based on what we're going to understand here as an ancient alien intelligence. This is essentially xenolinguistics, not the xenolinguistics that we possibly would expect from a radio signal. We have many radio telescopes. We're looking essentially for the visual projections from a highly advanced technology, inscription technology, that went into these stone artifacts. And when we see these projections and understand what those projections are communicating to us, we will essentially understand how scripture was written, how mythology was written, how ancient knowledge from those who I call them the designers. The theory is intelligent design. Royce, I know you're intricately involved in the Enki Speaks listserv, and you run Descendants of Enki, and I'm a member of both of those, so you're well aware of the individual Enki, who was the master scientist. So we're going to look at messages from Enki, and we're going to look at messages from his half-brother Enlil, and we're going to understand these messages in perspective of what they told our ancestors, what they're telling us, because there is, in fact, a very significant tie with these ancient artifacts to this year, 2012. There's a very significant Mayan connection. So I'm going to actually show how the Mayan, Mesoamerican, and the Mesopotamian civilizations coagulate here in this message, in these codex projections. I'm also going to provide material proof that anybody can substantiate. This is empirical fact that this technology, the technology that went into petrophotoglyphs, is in fact of a highly advanced and unknown state, most likely extraterrestrial. So with that being said, and if everybody would go to the website map, we'll go to the process method. It's the first green box there in the layout tree, and if you click that, right-click it and open it in the new tab, you can hang on to your website map. Otherwise, there's always a website map button on each page. And we're going to go through what it takes to translate a petrophotoglyph.
Okay.
Petro, stone, photoglyph, photographic engraving. By the way, Wikipedia, and I hold these in my hand. If anybody wants to see, just Skype LaserLess1. I will hold the stone up. What I hold in my hand was not allowed to be defined on the database of knowledge online called Wikipedia. That's just the dilemma that I've had to put up with over 17 years. Physical evidence of intelligent design and portals to communications with an advanced intelligence through this technology, through this inscription technology, proof of many things. And we're going to start looking at that. So as we scroll down, we'll see that there are, in fact, image translation. We're going to put ourselves within a sphere of visual perception, which is going to be determined by 3 independent factors. Combinations of these factors independently or none at all. The first one is spectrum-specific illumination, which essentially is the wavelength and the intensity of that wavelength applied to light up the image. We are going to most likely see negatives. You're going to see the inverse of the way the stone appears. You're going to see that inverse under various levels of red, various levels of blue, but I try to bring out essentially the detail through spectrum-specific illumination, and I've done a number of different versions of it because detail will change as the light, the wavelength, intensity, and wavelength of light changes applied to these artifacts. So part of the developing communication comes with changing the wavelength and intensity. The second variable that we're going to the second variable we're going to talk about is dimensional perspective. So these artifacts, as a stone, there is no up, there is no down or bottom or top. These stones are basically contiguous. Every portion, spot, and detail of these artifacts develops into part of the image structure. The technology that went in here spent many years in microelectronics, working with thin films, overlaid photolithographic masks. I've seen what we are capable of, and we are, quite advanced. We can develop, very large-scale chips that can do very many things, but we have not the capability of building hologram photographic images onto the surface of stone. Not like this. And I might add at this point also that these holograms are three-dimensional, which essentially means they work in both an X and a Y or a flat plane, and then they will work in a Z or an axis of magnification, something that we don't have the capability of fabricating at this point. With that being said, you can actually zoom in and you will see more image, more data, more visual data that will come out of this three-dimensional hologram if you zoom in or zoom out on it. And so magnification is a specific factor here too. So we have the X, Y, and Z axes in dimensional perspective. Bilateral symmetry, again, is something that I apply not all the time, but in order to develop the codex, the story, to finish it off, so to speak. It might be half finished. And I will show you this as we scroll down, how these three factors, if you scroll down just slightly, when applied to conventional rock art, I'm talking about rock art that's on the wall of a cliff. I lived in Arizona and Phoenix for 35 years, and in my backyard were a plethora of rock art, petroglyph stone. My son, I have pictures of him sitting on top of it. This was a public park, and people, were all over. They had significant respect for them, but they were well worn, these petroglyphs. So if you take a petroglyph and apply these principles, these three principles, spectrum-specific illumination, dimensional perspective, and bilateral symmetry, here we're going to, the dimensional perspective is a given and it's set, so we're not going to adjust that. I just do developments here with spectrum-specific illumination and bilateral symmetry. The first one, you can see somewhat of an image. In the one hand, he's just got a vase or a container, and using spectrum-specific illumination, bilateral symmetry, we see an inner self developing, and we see that he has two vases. It's more of a symmetrical figure. The second one is I've done two developments of that one. The original is polychrome, red on black. Again, image from the Southwest. And then I applied spectrum-specific illumination, bilateral symmetry. The third one is my actual favorite. You see an image with just one animal next to it, and when you apply bilateral symmetry, and I use both directions, so essentially that takes the information from half of the image and throws it out and folds the other half of the information out. In the one image, you'll see the individual with no animals next to him, and he's crying, he's frowning, and an inner self is reaching out. And then in the second one, when he has two animals, he's actually laughing, and you can see his eyes open, and he's actually smiling. If you magnify that using your magnification tool, if you're using IE8, it's in the lower right corner. Google uses, it's under tools. You'll actually see the detail in the face. These images come out of the stone. These images, under this technology that I've described here of spectrum-specific illumination, dimensional perspective, and bilateral symmetry, actually increase the scope of the projected information, and quite possibly were meant to be part of this image, though your archaeological enthusiast, your professional, would disagree at this point that these images were meant to be viewed under these conditions, though they make perfectly good sense to me, and in fact, increase the amount of information we're looking at. Okay, if you scroll down, we're going to use these same three factors on a sacred artifact discovered in 1531, mysteriously appeared on the tilma of Juan Diego, who was a peasant, and in 1531, I got that date right. Yep. Peasant meant he was an indigenous individual. He was a Mayan or an Aztec. He had Columbus had just discovered America 39 years earlier, so there wasn't much contact, exposure to Western civilization, to the European civilization. In 1491, both the New World and the Old World had no idea that they existed. And in fact, there was an enlightenment in 1492. That enlightenment is going to be felt this year, because this year is 2012 is the new 1492. There's going to be a revelation of sorts and an understanding. And as I was telling you, Royce, it's all going to be good. We might have to learn how to do the TiVo, but, it's all good. Okay, so I use these principles, actually just spectrum-specific illumination, not bilateral symmetry, and not dimensional perspective, just spectrum-specific illumination. I apply it to the image and specifically to the region of the face, and essentially you see eyes that open. These, I do not believe, were sketched in prior. This agave fiber or tequila fiber cloak has withstood the centuries and looks as it did when it was presented to Juan Diego. And there's a story behind it where he went to the missionary Father Zumara and showed it to him, and this particular artifact changed essentially the entire New World. This one solid material artifact was the catalyst in bringing an entire New World into a particular religious persuasion, Christianity. Though nobody has ever done this applied spectrum-specific illumination, you can click on these images and see enlargements. If you see eyes, you're understanding something that was meant to be understood today. So this artifact, like petroglyphs, as you will see, are time capsule artifacts. They require modern technologies in order to fully understand the data and information that's coming from these artifacts. In this case, the Virgin of Guadalupe, I apply spectrum-specific illumination, and we see the eyes moving, opening, closing. There is more. In 1979, a professor from, I think he's from Peru, his name is Jose Aste Tonisman, he's a PhD, was doing research with this artifact, scanned in high-resolution images, and discovered micro-codex image structures within the eye. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. And I'm going to show you how the micro-image structures, and they're photographic in detail, within the eyes of the Virgin are similar to the micro-image structures that we will see within the petrophotoglyph. In this case, within the eyes of the Virgin, you will see the entire miracle of of this artifact being presented to Juan Diego, and then Juan Diego with everybody around him. You'll get to see that, and then you'll see it in relation to a micro codex image that is coming from the artifact. So this essentially defines, again, another three-dimensional hologram inscribed artifact. This one happens to be on cloth.
Okay, Les.
Yeah.
Pardon me for interrupting you, but Jennifer said that she was lost, and she was wondering if you could tell her what color you're on now.
What color?
Yeah,
I'm not. Oh, what page I'm on?
I think that may be what she means.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if you go to the website map and hit the first green button, you'll see the process method there, and that's where we are right now. We're in it says the process method. It's the first green tab, and we're just. Yeah, we've gone through the actual 3 parameters that are applied to petrophotoglyphs to bring out the image structures. I've gone through applying it to conventional rock art and a sacred artifact. And as you scroll down, you'll see that when this particular method is applied to petrophotoglyphs, we develop an image structure there. And again, the only thing I do is essentially erase background information, but everything you see is been lit up and is part of the stone, and there is no fabrication or anything of the drawing there, of the image projection rather. I have another a web page that gets into the details, so you can actually, it tells you what program you might want to use to translate these images. I provide very large images that can be translated, and that's under details and practical applications of the process method. If you want to click that in another tab, you can read on and actually verify what these images that I post here, because everything that's been posted here in this website is easily repeatable and substantiated using this process method. What we're dealing with here, and there would be pundits and sophisticados that will argue with me, is image perception in another dimension. And if you look at the classic description of image of fourth dimension, you will see that there are essentially 4, they call them tuples or vectors that are present. Well, we understand 3 of those as being length, width, and depth. But if you take those 3 parameters and you subject those to what we call abnormal spectrum illumination, or if we were to look at everything in a negative field, we would see a red ocean, and we would see black sand, and we would see a red sky, and things would not be normal. This would not, however, this is perception in an altered dimension. Some artifacts were actually meant to be perceived in this altered dimension, and that's what we're talking about here. So I've given 2 models here. One is a theoretical spatial model, and the other is a practical visual model. And the visual model comes right from the petroglyph, the unicorn petroglyph, developing a creature that we will talk about a little bit later. So that basically runs that page, the process method. So if you would like to go back to the website map, and please interrupt me, Royce, at any point. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Or, you know, if somebody wants to see this stone, just give me a call, Skype, Laser Les 1, and I'll hold the stone up, and we could, you know, you could look at it. But it's there's in the website map there's a description of the Genesis petroglyph, there's a description of the unicorn petroglyph, and a description of the petroglyph star map that develops from the Genesis petroglyph. We're going to go now under the Genesis petroglyph, which is orange, the first box, and it says an ancient god and the Ark of Salvation. And if you want to right-click that, you can save the map or just open that tab up. And we'll get into the Genesis petroglyph. If you went to the description page, it would say that it weighs essentially 2.25 pounds. 1 kilogram is 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. A symmetrical stone. It has a flat bed on it, a flat side where it can stand up, and it was meant to be viewed in from a number of different perspectives. The other side of the stone is also highly glyphed and projects an image codex. So we're going to take this petroglyph, the Genesis petroglyph, and we're going to develop the most prominent glyphic feature on there, which happens to be, and Royce would know who I'm talking about. His name is Enki.
Right.
So we're going to describe him first as a figure. He is, he's viewed from his left profile. Essentially, there is a triad of concentric lines which forms a spiral, and a spiral in the cosmos, in the galaxy, signifies movement, and essentially this is what we're looking at here. This spiral, this triad within the body of this individual is essentially signifying that there is movement going on here. All right, so this individual is, if you were to write down what you see, and I've captured the image here both on the stone, I've done a sketch of it, and I've also eliminated some of the background information. And we're looking at it in both a positive and negative field with various levels of spectrum-specific illumination. We see the left profile of a kneeling figure with a strapped-down helmet that supports a horn. I imagine there's one on the other side too, front-facing horn.
Kind of like a bagging helmet?
A choctae strapped down, exactly, yeah. In Mesoamerica, they call it a choctae helmet. Okay. He is emerging, or there's a pyramid at the base. Okay. One arm is extended, and the other arm is his left arm is extended down, holding an object, or what will develop into a goat, and the left arm is extended outward, and that will be holding another object. As you scroll down a little bit, I magnify his face, and you can see better the horned, strapped-down helmet. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention he's wearing a winged suit. He's in a suit that's got a set of wings on the back. That is going to all tie into defining who this individual is, because we're going to see that this individual, his epitaphs and his signs, and this is how it is through interpreting the petrophotographs. There are signs and symbols that come out, whether they be epitaphs or, in fact, I have seen Aramaic Hebrew words come out defining. I've seen Egyptian hieroglyphics come out too.
Okay. Now, you want to tell us a little something about exactly what this is? These images are telling us, right?
Yeah. So
okay.
We're looking, and then you can see actually a photogenic eye that develops where the eye would be right under the rim of the helmet. It would be a left eye, and you would see that eye develop, and we can get into that further later too. So you scroll down a little bit, and we develop the whole codex from the front of the stone in this particular position. And right now I'm down to where it says Surface Projection of Glyphic Image Codex. And essentially what we're defining here now is this image kneeling, wearing a strapped-down horned helmet with a winged suit, emerging from a pyramid, is holding a crescent-shaped object. Emerging from his face is a fish. The fish and the goat define a Capricorn. These were the signs of Enki, the firstborn of Anu from Nibiru. Royce knows very well who Enki is. He runs a listserv called Descendants of Enki. Enki was a great scientist. He was the master designer of humanity. He was also the champion of humanity. The Al-Trahasis, later translated into Genesis 6, describes how Enki defied the pantheon, came to earth, and his chosen good person named Al-Trahasi, though he couldn't tell him directly, spoke through the reeds of Al-Trahasis's hut, instructing him to build a vessel of specific size, dimension, and structure. We're going to see that vessel here in just a minute. And we're going to see that this stone in this position is Codex Al-Trahasis. This is Enki, and this is him telling humanity to build this vessel. So we scroll down, and we can see his epitaphs. There's also a jaguar that's above the image of the fish that floats.
That's interesting. I'm sorry I interrupted you on that one, but this panther image has been found by another researcher somewhere close to Easter Island in relation to the Olmecs and the Mayans.
Right. Well, you know, I believe that petrophotoglyphs, these stones, which are ancient cell phones or portals of communication, are probably in libraries all over the world. This particular sample I'm showing you today comes from the Midwestern United States. I found samples out in the far western United States. I haven't traveled the world looking for them, but I imagine they're everywhere, and you can discern what they are by lighting them up. You can also discern what they are by looking at them through magnifying optics. So if we scroll down a little bit, we'll get to see what the ark looks like. And I developed the crescent-shaped vessel as best I can. It projects mostly the rear port side. Port stern is what we're looking at. He's holding that object, and you can see his extended arm. And once we get into the detail of the ark, you'll actually see his fingers holding onto this vessel. And as it changes, as you change the position of the stone and record an image, you're going to see that the images on the deck of the ark essentially change also. And if you put them together, you'll understand what the codex is signifying. And we're going to do, by the bottom of this page, I think you'll have a better understanding. Using bilateral symmetry, if we scroll down a little bit, you see the bow or front of this crescent-shaped vessel. This is something that has been the matter of opinion. It's been described in detail in Scripture. You go to Genesis 6, it gives you how long, the length, the width, the fact that there's a hole in the top. You know, this vessel that projects from the stone using bilateral symmetry is comprised of a buoyancy counterbalance at the bottom, keep it upright, a hermetically sealed vehicle with 3 levels, and an opening at the top that most likely can be closed to make it hermetically sealed.
Okay,
but nevertheless, yes?
Real quick, like before I lose this, Jennifer in the chat room was asking, did you say the Capricorn sign was evil?
No, the Capricorn sign is the goatfish. It's not. It's Enki's sign, and it wasn't known until the mythology of Enki was understood through the Epic of Gilgamesh. The potsherd, the cylinder sherds that were collected in all the universities in the early 1900s until they discovered that it was cuneiform, a language, and they all had to scoop them all up and bring them to one spot and put it together. And they ended up with this incredible story called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Al-Jahasi's, the Genesis 6, the flood story is part of that.
Okay.
So this is where all that comes from. Enki was the champion of humanity. This was his design. And as if we're going to see that it might look like a test tube, it is in fact a test tube. It looks like a bottle almost. If you take a Coke bottle and put some rocks in the bottom, but not too many rocks, and put it in the water, it will float. And if it never gets water in the top, it'll float forever, upright, if you know what I'm saying. And that's principle here. And if you wanted to build the ark, I would imagine the best thing you could do is look at these drawings here of the vessel and take it from there. If you scroll down a little bit, we're going to get into the micro-image subcodex developments. That's just down towards the bottom of the page on the deck of the ark. And herein we're going to go back and look at micro-image codex developments also in the eye of the Virgin of Guadalupe. However, on the ark, if you scroll down there, you will see I've identified three of them right here to begin with. One of them is called the Venus Codex. The other is called Codex of the Man and the Giraffe. And there's another one called the Primate Codex. And in each one of those, as you scroll down and I increase that magnification, you can actually see the image structures in there. The one with the giraffe is very interesting because the face of the man that's just to your right of that giraffe head in the upper left corner, and all you see is a bit of the neck and a right eye, and you can see the spots on the giraffe. It's photographic in detail, but the man is wearing the horns of the giraffe, and that's very interesting because the giraffe itself, as you can see in the one next to it, almost has I'd say it's not a horn structure. It's more like a crest or a crown on its head. So I've also included one that's called Codex Anatomical Components of Humanity Illustrated. And if you look very closely, almost in the left center, you'll see the body of a man, and just to his right, you'll see his buttocks and legs. And then just to the right of that, you'll see the formation or image of a woman that's legless, and that would be the Venus Codex. There's two perspectives of the Venus Codex there. As you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a research note, and if you click that right-click that research note, it'll take you to the Wikipedia page that I've posted the comparison image between the codex, subcodex microstructures that developed from the Genesis petroglyph, and this is, again, we're talking three-dimensional hologram imaging. And once again, we're talking xenolinguistics. People will tell you they have indications of xenolinguistics. This is material evidence of it, and that's all I can say. I've never seen material evidence of xenolinguistics other than this, and I'm also talking about the sacred artifact. And though I haven't worked with the Shroud of Turin, I imagine there's something there too, because that image is required to be seen under spectrum-specific conditions. A negative, in other words. So if you want to see that micro-image comparison, and if you click it, you get a really, it develops into a large structure, I call them research panels, and you can see what develops from the eye of the Virgin. That was the work of Dr. Tonsman in 1979 at Cornell University, actually developed photo image structures in the eye of the miracle as it occurred in 1531. And also how similar that inscription technology, photographic detailed hologram inscription technology, when applied to stone, develops the same 3D microimage hologram structures there. And let's see. Okay, so there's keyword translations of things we were talking about. Essentially, we've we've defined as we went along the fact that we were talking about various civilizations. We're talking about the Mesopotamian civilization, the identification of the great scientist Enki, and by virtue of the horned helmet that the Mesoamericans wore, or Mesopotamians wore, the fact that he is holding on to his symbol of the ark, or the crescent-shaped vessel, and his epitaphs of the goat and the fish, or the Capricorn.
Are you there?
Yeah, Jennifer's
Okay.
calling. I'm just going to answer.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, I guess if I'm going to hold this stone up for her and show her that this is what we're talking about right here. I don't know if you could see this, Jennifer, but here is the Genesis petroglyph in the position that we're looking at. Here's the there he is. There's Enki right there. Okay. I'm sorry? No, Royce can't hear you right now, but I can hear you. But I'm just holding it up to show you that this artifact, and you can see these lines are they are excised. They come out from the stone. That triad of circular lines come out from the stone. So let me get back to this photographic image. We're going to look at. It's called. This one is the Eyes of Horus, and it's just below. Wait. What we're going to look at here first is the scripture. A window thou shalt make to the ark, finish it above, and a door set in the side. We don't see the door from this perspective. And 3 stories, and there are in fact 3 levels of this ark. And of course a counterbalance, buoyancy counterbalance at the bottom, making it structurally sound, keeping it upright. Below that, we're going to, and if you want to right-click on that, that's those are the eyes of Horus there. And Horus also, champion of humanity. According to the Egyptian mythology, there was a race between Horus to save humanity and Seth, who wanted to demolish humanity in a boat of stone. And in fact, Horus made his boat of gopher wood and disguised it as stone. Won the race. Seth's boat sank. Humanity was saved, and that's why we're here today, according to Egyptian mythology. If you look at the eyes of Horus, you might notice draconian features. There are many disciplines that will talk about how the designers were descendants, did possess draconian or reptilian type features, and the eye certainly, especially with the stripe that continues right into the iris of the eye. Anyway, that's just an observation I've made here. So if we go back to the website map. Sure.
When you click on that link, that the last picture, wouldn't you say that might be an explosion, like some sort of destruction of the earth, or I don't know. It looks like somebody just. It looks like it's an explosion of something, or maybe a volcanic explosion if you want. I don't know. Would you say that it looks like that?
As an image generator, you will get many ideas of what you're seeing, and you will formulate. If you were to write down what you see, and attempt to look up, you will understand what you're looking at there. The images were meant to convey information, and because it's a visual language, it transcends all of the spoken languages. So if you were speaking to me now in a language I didn't understand, you would still be describing the same thing from the stone that you just described to me.
Okay, Les.
Yeah, Royce.
I've tried to add Jennifer into the line, but she's not answering when I PM her, so I guess that's not going to work out.
Okay, well, she was talking with me, and I was holding it up to the speaker, so I was getting her information and her comment in there. She was describing her impression of this particular image that we were looking at.
Uh-huh. Let's see if she's joined in now. Are you with us,
Hi.
Jennifer? Yeah, I got her.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I brought you in so you could. I brought him in so you could talk to him and ask him questions live on the air.
I was asking him the image that we get when we click on the link, the last one down at the left. It seems to me as if it's. I'm sorry, I'm having a little cold. It seems to me as if it's an explosion of something, like as if it's like a volcano explosion or a bomb, atomic bomb. I want to know.
Okay, are we looking at the same one, Jennifer? Are we looking at photographic image inscribed stone, the Genesis petroglyph or petroglyph, Horus, the god of the sky? Are you looking?
Well,
is that the one you're looking at?
Yeah, the one that looks like a fingerprint. Yeah, that one.
It says Horus, god of the sky. Is it that one?
I don't know. I'm looking at when we click on that link under the head.
Okay, which page are you on here? Are you on the? Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to tell you. When you click, when you're in the Genesis
petroglyph.
Yeah, that one. And then you click on the first link down below on the head. Yeah. Click for the future details of the ritual event. When you click on that, you get the Mayan god Pascal.
Okay, so halfway down the page, in blue it says, click for further details of this ritual event. So that's where you are. Okay, now I understand where you are. Okay, so if I go there, it says the Mesopotamian deity Enki and the Mayan god Tekel too.
That's right. Are we there yet? Is that where we were?
Oh, we were, no. That was a development from that page. We'll get back. We're going to get onto that in just a second here. That's where we were going. We were going to relate the image of Enki to the image of Tekel too, and we were going to understand at that point how Mesoamerica and Mesopotamia, the New World and the Old World, and thousands of years of difference actually became one. And you'll see as we go along here that essentially God sent emissaries through the civilizations of humanity to disperse the religions and disperse the languages, only at some point to bring them all together again. And this is that point.
All right, I thought we were at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, how about go back? Can you keep a baseline of the if you go back to impactoptics.com and go to the website map, that would be the best place to go right now.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're on the website map, and then if you scroll over in the blue, the second blue box says Orion and the Genesis petroglyph. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, click that one. Click Orion and the Genesis petroglyph, and we're going to use the principle of dimension and bilateral symmetry, and we're going to mirror him. We're going to mirror the image of Enki as he projects from the stone, and we're going to trace an arrow that projects through the body of Enki.
Okay. Yeah, I got him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That arrow is, in fact, part of a structure that's incised of linear cracks in the stone that you will see at this point form an arrow through the image.
Yeah.
And if you scroll down, you will actually see the mythology of Orion. And if you were to put a star, every single star in the Orion pattern, I'm talking about every single one, you will essentially, the lines of intersection will align with that star pattern. So essentially, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see what I'm saying, aligning the prominent glyphic image to Orion. This is what we've got now. We've got a star map in this codex that has already given us enough information to build an ark and save humanity. And we're now looking at a star map in this particular mask image projection from the stone. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see a note that I put there that says this may be the way an ancient civilization saw the Orion star pattern, and it could very well have been Sumeria, since Enki was their hero, and this stone projects just that. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see there is a fact that may or may not be disputed by whatever scientist you talk to, but the fact is the three pyramids, the Great Pyramid, Khufu is, and the two other pyramids on the Giza Plateau are aligned to the belt stars of Orion. Orion being one of the most significant, or the most significant constellation, arguably. And the other constellations, Taurus and the Pleiades and the Sirius binary star system of the Dogon, that all ties in, and they're very close to, they're on either side of Orion. Orion can be seen in both hemispheres. I know that Royce has had Gary David on the show, who's written a number of books and gathered significant facts that point to civilizations building their cities around this star pattern, over thousands of miles in the southwest. Okay, so that will take care of that one. Go back to the website map again, and scroll down to the third blue box where it says the Orion Connection and Codex, and that would be on the website map page. The third blue box down we're going to develop that a little bit further and show just exactly what Enki was trying to, Horus was trying to tell us. That's us, humanity 2012. This stone, this information, this portal that we're opening up here is essentially the same. My blind dog. This portal we're opening up here is essentially the reed huts of Al-Trahasis. The reeds of Al-Trahasis' hut. Scroll down a little bit, and we're going to get to the Mesopotamian connection to the Orion Codex. And here we have some cylinder seal impressions of Enki on the crescent-shaped vessel, wearing the horned helmet. He was the master god of Mesopotamia. And again, Enki is he was the master god of wisdom. He was lord of the Apsu. groundwater. His symbols were the goat and the fish, and he was he saved humanity against the deluge. I guess we're running out of time here. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the mask of Lord Pakel, and you'll see that NK2 is wearing a mask. I'm right now at a Mesopotamian and Egyptian deity, the mask of Pakel II of Palenque. You'll see in the mask a pierced nose, lips of the mask. You'll see the actual beard and lips of NK just below that.
10 o'clock.
Time goes, doesn't it? The Orion Codex. So what we're looking at here is essentially what we have understood through the ages as the presentation of God in the New World, presentation of God in the Old World, and essentially this message tells us that they were one and the same. Scroll down a little further, you'll see the sarcophagus lid of Pakel II. I've done some image work with that, including bilateral symmetry. You'll see both the image in the stone and the image in the sarcophagus lid are kneeling, holding their epitaph. One arm is down, the other is extended out, and they both have their nose being pierced. And piercing the nose is a very significant ritual of omniscient descension from Chichen Itza, understood by Mesoamerica as ascension to priesthood. Scrolling down a little further, you'll see again the ark and the structure of the ark again there, and the image of the map, the star map. And we're now developing the story, that the communication. Okay, we have images of an ancient deity. We have a crescent-shaped vessel, a boat of salvation. The deities emerging from the Great Pyramid. We've defined Enki and Horus of Egypt, Enki of Mesopotamia. We have the ritualized nose-pierced mass of Pakel II, and we have the Mayan calendar, which coincidentally ends this year in 324 days. That would be, actually tomorrow will be 323 till December 21st. So not that I'm counting, but I give you the hours and seconds. There's going to be a change, and it's going to be good. Shall I continue, Royce, or are we running out of time?
No, go ahead. I'm not limited over here, but I can go up to another 30 minutes to about an hour, and then I got to get some rest to get my son off to school in the morning.
Okay, yeah, I get hoarse too. If you go back to the website map page, we will the last. It's called an ancient time capsule message, and if you click on that one, there's some theory that I've applied here, because I'm taking actual points in the stone and attempting to relate those points in the stone to the celestial coordinates. We today use rate of ascension, right ascension, and declination as the determinants and of celestial position, and that all has to be based on a particular epoch. So we're dealing with epoch 2000 and the celestial coordinates of those objects, those celestial objects defined within the Orion star pattern. And then as you scroll down, you will see that within the stone, I am right now at aligning the star map to the hologram codex. Prior to that, it's just more information about Altrahasis, more information about the star map as it projects from the Genesis petroglyph. Coincidentally, Betelgeuse, large red red giant star that's at the apex of the Orion constellation. If you were to put that right in the eye of Enki as it projects from the stone, it lines up fairly perfectly. And three belt stars, with the Great Pyramid, which is aligned to Alnitak, one of the belt stars. We see those, and I develop a procedure. If you scroll down, it's called the petroglyph star map alignment procedure. It's based on the inscribed arrow through the body and a vector from a significant crack that penetrates the image of Enki and the star map, emanating from the Sirius star system. Essentially, as you scroll down, I've identified some points and attempted to apply celestial coordinates to those points. What are those points? Well, if we're looking at this from a Mesopotamian perspective, then those points are the coordinates of a celestial object, and as Royce could tell you, that celestial object is most likely Nibiru, or the 12th planet, the home planet of Enki, most likely Horus, and those other defined deities, one and the same. This individual, as he walked through civilizations, may also have been called Muhammad and Jesus and Allah and Buddha and a number of different names. Zarathustra. We don't. All we know is that from this stone, all of their symbols and all of their projections seem to identify them as such. So I further, attempt to relate a time frame to this, and there are a number of different theoretical models that I've placed in there. And if we have another 5 minutes, I'd like to go through just one more stone, just one more image projection here. And if we go back to the website map page, we'll look at the unicorn petroglyph for just a second. A very significant stone, a two-part stone. And it would be the unicorn petroglyph. Just under where it says description, it says the unicorn petroglyph and biblical Leviathan. And herein we're going to click that second yellow box on the website map page and look at the unicorn petroglyph. Very unique stone of petrophotoglyph, because 9 out of 10, and actually 10 out of 10 archaeologists will tell you that this is in fact not a petroglyph. There is no discernible markings on it, and there aren't. There are no discernible markings until you light this stone up, but yet it is very uniquely shaped. It's found in two pieces. And on the inside surfaces, you get the projected codex, and it's a two-part codex, so it starts on the bottom stone and continues to the top stone. So the bottom stone we're going to look at, and it develops into a creature. And the creature has a single swirled horn. Scroll down, it says developing the unicorn image, and again, applying the three factors, though we don't really use bilateral symmetry here as much. We're just looking at the image as it projects from the stone. And if you were to write down what you see on this image, I scroll down a little bit further where it says details projecting from the unicorn image. You see an image that basically is standing in a ditch with a blanket on its back, a single swirled horn coming out of a crest on its head, something penetrating its jaw, and its tongue being pulled out of its mouth with a rope, with something pulling it downward. There's much more, and we can get into that. Scrolling down, you also see juxtaposition to the left of that, another creature. That other creature there is going to be defined as Quetzalcoatl, or the Mesoamerican deity. The Mormons think Quetzalcoatl may have been the manifestation of Jesus walking in the New World. However, what we have here is the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl and the swirled unicorn, the single horn, swirled horn, and swirled or coiled the transliteration for that word is Leviathan, or the transliteration of Leviathan is swirled and coiled. The Leviathan in the Bible, the swirled and coiled serpent of Isaiah, is essentially not this swirled and coiled creature. They're two different creatures, and it's described here as the Leviathan in Job of 41. It's described as the behemoth in Job 40, and it's described as the Leviathan in Job 39. If the book of Job, or Ludlil Del Ninike, that would be the ancient Sumerian translation prior to the transliteration into the Bible of the book of Job. This creature here is essentially an avatar of the Creator. It's the portal created for Job. At the end of the story, after his trial and tribulation, and to see if he was a dedicated individual, the deity, the designer, spoke to Job, and he spoke to Job through this creature, and it's described in detail in the final chapters of the book of Job. There's nothing in the Bible that's described in any more detail, not person, not place, not thing. I'm talking about physical description of anything in the Bible. There is nothing more described than a single creature in the end of the book of Job. This is it. And it's tethered to Quetzalcoatl. Any questions?
I don't see any right now. I guess there's nobody asking any questions at this point. But you got more of this research on your website yet, don't you?
I've got a lot of it, and we can get back to it on a different occasion. I just wanted to show at this point how these petrophotoglyphs are material evidence that our religious scriptures and mythology, as we know it, came from, there was a factual basis behind it. And the factual basis is the scientific technology that went into these artifacts that can project these particular images. So what we're looking at now is a portal in time to an ancient, highly advanced intelligence through this technology, through this inscription technology, and it's understood, and will be understood in 2012 that these artifacts, and in fact the artisans, the designers of these artifacts, are coming to make contact with us, to bring us what we've always wanted, and that's going to be a life without worry, without financial problems, and essentially we won't, because they're going to take all our gold, as Royce understands, because their planet survives on that particular element as for sustenance, not for their monetary system as we use it, though we do use it in industry. They will give us technology that we need. We just won't base our civilization on gold. And like I said earlier, we'll probably end up learning to bend knee and tend sheep, so to speak, coin a phrase from Captain Kirk in Who Mourns for Adonis.
I don't remember him saying that, and I saw all the original episodes. I must not have been paying attention.
It was right at the end there, where if the phaser didn't blow up his temple, then he said it to McCoy. He said, well, we're just going to have to learn how to bend knee and tend sheep, because they were going to be servants to Apollo, but they ended up nuking his temple with the phaser and saved Captain Kirk and the crew.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
That's my favorite one.
Okay. Well, was there anything else you'd like to cover with us tonight?
Well, I just encourage anybody to continue on. Further on, you'll see how this creature actually is emerging from the arm of the deity with a spike-pierced palm, tying the old world or the Old Testament to the New Testament, and you'll see how there's actually an emissary, and I call it the Third Eye Codex. It's quite complex and very informative, and I'd be glad to get into it at some other point with you, Royce, if you have me back on your show.
Well, I'll be happy to. Okay, well, real quick, let me remind everybody that Les's website, if you want to learn more about this and see the actual pictures, is www.impactoptics.com. And he has a site map on there, and he's got it all laid out and easy to find. So all you have to do is go in there and ask. And he's got his email information over there where you can contact him. And don't forget to mention my show at www.paranormalpalace.com. I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a pleasure to do the show for you, and I always want to thank my listeners, because I couldn't have a show without them any more than I could have one without a guest. And I also would like to point out to everybody that, I do plugs for United Paranormal International, since I am their South Texas director, and since they give me plugs for my show as well. So we kind of do an exchange there. Don't forget to go see them. They're really good people over there. And this coming Saturday, I'm going to do the last installment of the Ancient Mysteries Month. And it's going to be Scott Crichton and Gary Osborne. And we're going to talk about a slightly different topic about lost civilizations, but I didn't really mark what the topic was on my schedule. But I'll be sending an email out about it. And don't forget to check my YouTube channel, Mr. Paranormal. The show will be archived over there, as well as in the Paranormal Palace Radio archives. Les, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'll be
thank you very much. I'd just like to say one thing. Scott Creighton, I use his theory on the last page of the Genesis of the Orion, the message, and in fact I cite his work there. Very complex, very detailed, and based again on the Orion constellation and the pyramids. So I'm very familiar with him, and I'll be glad to listen in this Saturday, eager to. But thank you for having me, Royce. I do really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you for coming on, Les, and that's going to be this coming Saturday, everybody. Make it a plan to be here. Tell all your friends about it, and I'll be here ready and waiting for everyone. Thank you very much, and Les, I want to say good night to you, and I'm going to stay in touch. As you know, we're already in the same group in several places, so it's going to be easy for us to stay in touch.
That's for sure.
Okay, I'll talk at you later.
Thank you again, Royce, and you have a good night.
Thank you, Les.
And thank all your listeners. Goodbye now.
Goodbye. Good night, everybody.
Or, in fact, image translation, we're going to put ourselves within a sphere of visual perception, which is going to be determined by three independent factors. Combinations of these factors independently or none at all. The first one is spectrum-specific illumination, which essentially is the wavelength and the intensity of that wavelength applied to light up the image. We are going to most likely see negatives. You're going to see the inverse of the way the stone appears. You're going to see that inverse under various levels of red, various levels of blue, but I try to bring out essentially the detail through spectrum-specific illumination, and I've done a number of different versions of it because detail will change as the light, the wavelength, intensity, and wavelength of light changes applied to these artifacts. So part of the developing communication comes with changing the wavelength and intensity. The second variable that we're going to the second variable we're going to talk about is dimensional perspective. So these artifacts, as a stone, there is no up, there is no down or bottom or top. These stones are basically contiguous. Every portion, spot, and detail of these artifacts develops into part of the image structure. The technology that went in here spent many years in microelectronics, working with thin films, overlaid photolithographic masks. I've seen what we are capable of, and we are, quite advanced. We can develop, very large-scale chips that can do very many things, but we have not the capability of building hologram photographic images onto the surface of stone. Not like this. And I might add at this point also that these holograms are three-dimensional, which essentially means they work in both an X and a Y or a flat plane, and then they will work in a Z or an axis of magnification, something that we don't have the capability of fabricating at this point. With that being said, you can actually, I know you're intricately involved in the Enki Speaks listserv, and you run Descendants of Enki, and I'm a member of both of those, so you're well aware of the individual Enki, who was the master scientist.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look at messages from Enki, and we're going to look at messages from his half-brother Enlil, and we're going to understand these messages in perspective of what they told our ancestors, what they're telling us, because there is, in fact, a very significant tie with these ancient artifacts to this year, 2012. There's a very significant Mayan connection. So I'm going to actually show how the Mayan, Mesoamerican, and the Mesopotamian civilizations coagulate here in this message, in these codex projections. I'm also going to provide material proof that anybody can substantiate. This is empirical fact that this technology, the technology that went into petrophotoglyphs, is in fact of a highly advanced and unknown state, most likely extraterrestrial. So with that being said, and if everybody would go to the website map, we'll go to the process method. It's the first green box there in the layout tree, and it's if you click that, right-click it and open it in the new tab. You can hang on to your website map. Otherwise, there's always a website map button on each page. And we're going to go through what it takes to translate a petrophotoglyph.
Okay.
Petro, stone, photoglyph, photographic engraving. By the way, Wikipedia, and I hold these in my hand. If anybody wants to see, just Skype Laser Les 1. I will hold the stone up. What I hold in my hand was not allowed to be defined on the database of knowledge online called Wikipedia. That's just the dilemma that I've had to put up with over 17 years. Physical evidence of intelligent design and portals to communications with an advanced intelligence through this technology, through this inscription technology, proof of many things. and we're going to start looking at that. So as we scroll down, we'll see that there are optics.com. And if everybody would, if there's anybody listening, it's http://impactoptics, impactoptics.com. And I think Royce had it on his index page. So,
right.
Anybody wants to go there, I'm going to start with the website map. And my recommendations, I don't know what browser is best. I find that Internet Explorer 8 works good for the number of the motion or GIFs that I have, images. Google Chrome, Firefox is actually too fast, and sometimes they get hung up. So there's a choice there, and one is slower, one is faster. I'm going to use Internet Explorer. Both of them have Internet Explorer in the lower right, there's a magnifying glass. So any of the images that we see, if you think you want to look at more detail and enlargement, you can either go there or most times I've provided an enlargement where if you right-click and open in another tab, you can actually see the enlargement of that image. So we're going to start with there's a Zoroaster button that indicates the website map, and if we all click that website map and keep that as our first tab, we can then open up this portal through this website. There are very few websites that are actually based on what we're going to understand here as an ancient alien intelligence. This is essentially xenolinguistics, not the xenolinguistics that we possibly would expect from a radio signal. We have many radio telescopes. We're looking essentially for the visual projections from a highly advanced technology, inscription technology that went into these stone artifacts. And when we see these projections and understand what those projections are communicating to us, we will essentially understand how scripture was written, how mythology was written, how ancient knowledge from those who I call them the designers. The theory is intelligent design. Royce.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Laser Les Tindell. And he's does a kind of work that I'm not totally familiar with. He's been on my show before. And he's going to be telling us about this kind of research he does, that he's able to look into negatives in a certain particular kind of way. I think he can describe the procedure better than I can, and be able to see images that were on the stone that you cannot see any other way. And he's found some very interesting thing about the Anunnaki from stones right here in America. Les, how are you doing tonight?
Fine, thank you, Royce, and thank you for having me back again. I really appreciate it. You were the first one to have ever offered me a radio interview for this research, which is unique in all the world. At this point, I have been doing it since 1994, publishing. I don't have any books, but all of my research is published on the website impactoptics.com, IMPACT, optics.com. And this website has been online about 16 years now. I go to the Wayback Machine and see the earlier versions and kind of laugh, but I wasn't off track. What I've discovered are stones that were inscribed with photographic images, and they're contiguous or continuous images. So they would be essentially a whole recording or a hologram. These stone-scribed holograms essentially are presented in a negative form or as media. Stone being very robust, and the media needs translation through optics. So I developed a process which involves spectrum-specific illumination, and all of these words I'm throwing out, petrophotoglyph or stone photo engraving, and spectrum-specific illumination are all kind of keywords that I've coined. And if you Google those words, you'll find that I'm basically the only research entity and information resource for these artifacts and the technology using spectrum-specific illumination. So what we're going to do tonight, Royce has offered me a little bit of time. We're going to open a portal, and this portal is going to be through the projections of a stone that we're going to light up. And I've already done that and recorded the images that project from the stone, placed them in a fashion such that they could be understood, because deciphering the projections is a simple matter of going to our database of knowledge. The Internet seems to provide a viable tool for that, and we can actually see some of the things that you've only heard and read about in life. I also have Skype Laser Les 1, one word, LASERLES1. If anybody wants to give me a call, I can flash the artifact up in front of them, although looking at these artifacts would be like looking at a DVD of a fantastic movie. There's really nothing there until you translate it through a DVD player or Blu-ray or whatever you have. So that's what we're going to do.
Need a certain thing in order to read it to make it visible. Now, also, you did mention in an email that you had a discovery of some kind of import, I think, for 2012. Are you going to share a little bit of that with us tonight as well?
Right. That's all part of the codex and the story that projects. And when you see these projections, and if you were to take a list of the things you see, in essence, you list them in order. I see this creature, and it's in a ditch, and I see this individual, and he's looking over this temple. Once you've described those things on a list, you can actually go to scripture, mythology, and archaeological records, and you would actually find that. Or if you didn't know that, you could actually write scripture or archaeological record from this. So this is essentially a portal, no different than a cell phone. It's a means of communication, and it requires translation, just like a phone takes an audio voice and turns it into an electronic signal, and then turns it to an audio signal that we can hear. There's a lot of translation there, or transduction of the image, and that's what we're going to do in